I'm Dr. Don Russell. I'm a psychotherapist, a trainer, and a professional speaker. I work in the area of trauma, trauma recovery, trauma treatment, and also vicarious trauma. And resilience is part of my work too. In this video, I want to continue a conversation from the previous video about mirror neurons, empathy, and why it's so important to connect with a human being in the process of recovering from trauma. To start with, though, I'm going to tell you a story about my little dog, Sophie. There's Sophie. She is a 2-year-old Bichon Frise, and she's a diva. She's a diva, what can I say? She doesn't like it too hot or too cold outside. So I'm speaking to you from Canada, and in Canada we have winter, and winter is really, really cold. And she really doesn't like going outside during the wintertime because her paws get cold and she gets cold, and her fur just isn't really winter fur. She also doesn't like it too hot, and so when she goes for a walk outside in the summertime, and even in Canada we have real summer, she doesn't like it very much and will kind of just stop and lie down in the middle of a walk. So Sophie doesn't like it too hot or too cold, but that's not the point. The point is, Sophie comes with me to my therapy office, and I do my job there, and she does her job there. And her job in my therapy office is to be a cute and well-behaved puppy. And usually she's pretty good at her job. During some conversations, most conversations actually, she'll curl up at my feet, literally between my feet, and fall asleep through most of the conversation. Other times, however, she walks over to the person I'm speaking with, my therapy client, and will curl up at their feet. Of course, I check to make sure that it's okay with them, because I understand not everybody is a dog lover. But if it's okay with them, then Sophie will curl up at their feet. And here's the point. I've noticed that there's a pattern, that Sophie makes that choice usually because in the conversation we're talking about something painful for the client, and so the emotional state of the client is hurt, upset, sad. Now, I don't know for sure what's going on in Sophie's mind and body and nervous system, but it's quite likely that she is responding unconsciously to the emotional state of the person that I'm speaking with. And her response is to move towards them and to comfort and console them in the best way that she knows how, which is making physical contact and curling up and going to sleep. Like I say, oftentimes at their feet, and if the client is comfortable, sometimes she'll jump up and lie down beside them on the sofa. So, in a similar way, a skilled therapist will identify the emotional state of the client and will want to respond in a way that communicates, I see that you're hurting, and I have compassion. Now, a more novice therapist will actually say those words, yo, I see that you're hurting, and I have compassion. However, a more experienced and skilled therapist will know that his or her mind and body and nervous system will communicate that information to the client through facial expression, through tone of voice, right? When I'm in one of those conversations, my voice automatically and quite unconsciously becomes just softer and more gentle and kind of quieter. And also pace of speech. My speech will just kind of slow down a little bit. So facial expression, tone of voice, pace of speech, but also, and probably most importantly and more powerfully, there's this energetic gut-to-gut communication that's outside of conscious awareness, usually. And that's actually why I was telling you the story about Sophie, because Sophie doesn't communicate through facial expression, well, not very much. And she doesn't communicate through tone of voice or pace of speech, because she just sort of sits there and is cute. But she is receiving and transmitting nervous system information. And that's why I love taking her to the office, because she's actually helpful, even though he hasn't actually been trained as a therapy dog. She's just cute. So Dan Siegel, one of the smartest guys I've ever had the pleasure of listening to and reading, he defines the mind as an embodied and relational and emergent self-organizing process that regulates the flow of energy and information both within us and between and among us. Short version, the mind is a embodied and relational process that regulates the flow of energy and information between people. So the therapist's compassion is part of the flow of energy and information that's passing between two people. And the energy and information is not merely cognitive thoughts and statements. I see your pain and I have compassion. In fact, that's actually probably the least valuable form of information for a person that's in emotional pain. The energy and information is being communicated body to body, and in fact, nervous system to nervous system. That energy and information is communicated in the language of emotion and felt experience, which is far more compelling and impactful and transformative than mere words. Here's why. It's because the negative information that's creating the emotional pain in the person is stored primarily in that same language of emotion and felt experience in the client's body and nervous system. So the person's mind or their thinking brain, their frontal cortex, may well be aware that they're in a therapist's office and the therapist is a kind person, and they may well be aware that they're in a good, supportive relationship with family and friends, and they may well be aware that the trauma or the painful experience happened 10 years ago. But that cognitive information doesn't do much to quiet the emotional distress in the body and the nervous system. What does quiet it is this interpersonal exchange, nervous system to nervous system, body to body. What I frequently call a vibe. So, when a person says, it just feels good to talk about it. For sure, at one level, what is helpful is taking the swirl of emotion and emotional disturbance that's in the body and translating it into language and speaking it. That really, really is somewhat helpful because it is organizing a chaotic internal experience. However, probably they are also experiencing inside a release and a reduction of those negative emotions because of the felt experience of being in the presence of another person who is listening, who cares, and is maintaining their own calm nervous system. And so what's happening is the calm and regulated nervous system of the therapist or the helpful and empathic friend is actually communicating information back to the person with the distress, to their nervous system. And what that does is it changes incrementally the memory. So the memory becomes actually a revised memory or memory 2.0 because the memory that they started to talk about is actually combined with the felt experience of telling the story and hearing and seeing and feeling the reaction from the other person And now we actually have memory 2.0. And that's why, it just feels good to talk about it. So here's a couple of ideas to make it practical. Certainly, if you are participating in therapy right now, one very useful exercise that your therapist may do on a regular basis is to invite you to pause the conversation and simply notice what feeling and what amount of feeling you're currently experiencing inside, in your psyche, in your soul, in your nervous system at the present moment. That's a fundamentally different question than what did you experience back then. This exercise allows a person to notice that the experience of remembering in the presence of a warm and engaged person and in a safe and quiet and comfortable office is different than the feeling that they're experiencing at the time. At the time, likely feeling helpless. At the time, likely feeling helpless and powerless and alone, but as they're telling it and it's being heard by another human being who has a regulated and calm nervous system, it's a different experience internally. So you can do the same thing on your own. As you're remembering a past experience, you can actually pause and, okay, wait a minute. As I remember that, what am I feeling inside right now? It's really surprising, but simply the process of labeling the emotion inside that's being experienced as we remember changes the inner experience. A second exercise involves taking a family pet, a cat or a dog, maybe an iguana. No, not an iguana. A cat or dog, or a loved one that's available, or even the recollection of a loved one or a pet. So I'll keep it simple by walking through this exercise, thinking about a family pet. So if you have a pet in the home, cat or a dog, try picking up the pet, as long as it's not a St. Bernard, picking up the pet and holding and petting the pet, and pay attention to your internal state as you do so. Now, quite likely the pet will be calm and relaxed because animals love warm attention. And then quite likely your nervous system and your mirror neurons will read the calm and relaxed emotional state of the animal. And as your nervous system reads their nervous system, your nervous system will calm down. Of course, you can do this with a loved one too, by hugging them or just staying in close proximity to them if they are staying calm and relaxed. And if you tune into what your body and what your nervous system is experiencing in their calm presence, you'll notice that you start to feel calm too. Here's one more practical exercise. If you find your mind going back to that painful, traumatic memory, take a moment and measure how much disturbance you find inside when you remember. Check your body rather than your mind and give it a number from 1 to 10, with 10 being an overwhelming amount of disturbance. Don't linger there too long, just long enough to get a reading. And then turn your attention to a memory that is pleasant and enjoyable. This might feel awkward or difficult or fake, but hang on. Do it anyways. Turn your attention to something pleasant or enjoyable. A memory hanging out with a child, memory hanging out with your BFF, or being out in nature sometime when you felt at peace. If you're having trouble doing that, then find a symbol, an icon, or a pleasant trigger. Maybe a framed picture of a baby or a child or a loved one, or a picture of your BFF, or a nature scene. If you don't have one in your in your environment right there, you can Google nature scene and you can find a nature scene. You can find a million nature scenes. And just go there and allow yourself to feel what it feels like to remember connecting to a child, connecting to a best friend, connecting in nature. And then again, measure what your body and your nervous system is experiencing now. Linger there, feel the feeling. Notice where you feel this new feeling, this enjoyable or pleasant feeling. Notice where you feel it in the body. And just linger on it and savor it and allow it to be there and just enjoy it. Now, what you've done is you've learned from experience that you can change your emotional state if you have the right positive triggers to change from a negative state to a more positive state. And that is a really, really important thing to be aware of, is if you have the right place to go, you can change your emotional state. I guarantee you with practice that gets a lot easier. But for now, just notice that that's possible, and take it away and practice it. If you find this exercise helpful, take it away and practice it. Also, if you have a pet in the home, use your pet to communicate their nervous system state to your nervous system state, or a loved one, same thing. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this video. I would love if you left a comment or a question. If you leave me a question, I'll do my best to answer the question in a subsequent video. And also, by all means, I would love if you subscribed to this YouTube channel so that you are among the first to be notified when I post a new video. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope that this has been helpful.